Yes. Oh, I was lip syncing, obviously, but hello, beautiful people, and welcome to another edition of Meaningful Conversations with Dr. L. I'm your host, Dr. L, and I am so grateful that you are joining us again tonight for another Meaningful Conversations. This month, May, is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so, all throughout May, all of our shows will focus on a topic related to mental health. And I am so honored and so happy tonight to have as my guest someone who's like family. Someone who I've known for a long time. Our families are so interconnected and we love on each other, support each other. But she
Yes.
has a fascinating story, a story of triumph, a story of rising up, a story that is worth us having a meaningful conversation about tonight as it relates to women and mental health and substance use disorders recovery. And I could not think of a better person to have this conversation with than Yavohnda. We call her Vaughn, but Yavohnda McKay. She is a mother, she is a grandmommy, she is a wife, and she is also a mental health and substance use disorder recovery advocate. And so she and I are going to have just a conversation that is not an academic conversation. It's not a political commentary about people in recovery and lived experience, mental health and substance use disorder. It's a real, what I call a real conversation, a conversation that we need to have. One, so that we can eradicate or eliminate or reduce or change the stigma that is often associated with persons with mental health and substance use disorder lived experience. People who have lived a life and challenge, who have struggled with recovery, who have lost a lot, but also who have gained from that experience and have built and risen from the ashes, so to speak. I remember I was in a meeting in Charlotte. I want to give a shout out to Promise Resources Network and Peer Voices North Carolina, and Shireen Carrico, and everyone who works with that particular group and organization, an amazing organization out of Charlotte and Mecklenburg area. But I was at a meeting once, and we were talking about what they identify or the term for it is forensic peer support. And really what that is peer support specialists who have lived experience in the justice system and also who have lived mental health or substance use disorder experience. And this one particular lady came up to me during the break and we were talking and she said peer support specialists and supporting peer support specialists is so important because only peers, people in recovery, only they know what it's like to pull someone out of hell because they've been to hell and they know the way out. And that has stuck with me. I share that whenever I talk, whenever I have an opportunity to talk about peer support specialists and how valuable they are in the recovery process. I can't tell people what it's like to be in substance use disorder recovery because I've never been there. I can pray for people, I can support people, but I can't tell you what it's really like. I can't tell a mom what it's like who's lost a child or someone who has lost, someone to the system, right? Because I haven't been there. But I do know that there are hundreds, thousands, actually, not hundreds, thousands of people with lived experience who we identify as peer support specialists in our state who have been there and they can help, as that woman said to me, show someone the way out from what she identified or characterized as hell. And so when I thought about how do we have this raw conversation, this adult conversation about mental health and substance use disorder recovery, I need somebody who's not going to dress it up, who's not going to say what they think I want to hear, who's not going to try and be politically correct about it or academic about it, but who's going to talk real, because it's those kinds of testimonies that help other people find their way from a hell or find their way to the path of recovery. So Yavohnda Vaughn is with us tonight, and we're going to focus on women in particular, but I'm sure what we will share will be helpful to men as well. So welcome, Vaughn.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It is an honor. I am so excited that you're here. So we're going to jump right in. And I asked this first question of everyone. But before, my producer, all and everybody who watches Meaningful Conversations, who follows us either via YouTube live on Oak 93.5 or YouTube when I upload it, or however they watch it, they know that I always have to be prompted to do this disclaimer. So the opinions expressed on this show are my own and are not those of my employer, and do not reflect or not those of Oak 93.5, but they are my own as a part of Meaningful Conversations, which is a Savage Bull entertainment production. So that disclaimer's out the way.
Okay.
Let's jump in. I asked this question of all of my guests because I know, resumes tell you just, whether or not somebody's a good candidate to hire for a position. As a
Okay.
resume tell. I like people to say who they are in their own words, where you're from, your family background, where you grew up, anything you want. How do you describe yourself when people say, well, who are you? Tell me who you are and tell me a little bit about you. So let's start there. Tell our audience who you are.
Okay. I'm a recovering addict. Um, I'm nice. I'm kind. I am who I am. Take it or leave it. I
Right.
was born and raised in New York. I moved down south when my daughter was, she wasn't even a year old yet. Um, and today I'm a mother, a wife, a grandmother, and to some people, friends. And my husband said I have a big heart, and if it weren't for my heart, I'd probably be a lot further. But but I am who I am. I am who. That's who God gave. That's what God gave me.
And you do have a beautiful heart. So I will attest to that. And, one thing that also, in addition to being in recovery, you also help other people. You collect, I know you collect clothing, for example, and you do a clothes drive every year. Well, I don't know if you did it last year during COVID, but you absolutely do have a big heart. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I want to jump
Okay.
right in because this hour is going to go so fast, and
Okay.
you've got a remarkable and an inspiring story that's worth telling and sharing as far and as wide as we can. So I want to, and I know, we've talked before, but tell us about your journey, including how long you've been in recovery and your life when you were in active addiction, the life on the streets. Tell us about one. Start out with, I've been in recovery for however long, but this is where I was before recovery, and paint us a picture of what led you there, and you know uh, your experiences that you think will be helpful and that are not trauma triggering for you. So as much as you want to share, I know it all. I know a lot of it, and I know um,
You
but
know
I
I
want
don't hold back.
it's your story. It's your story to tell. So, and I want you to feel as comfortable as you feel
Okay.
sharing as much as you do. So, start with, I've been in recovery for however long, but before that, this is where I was, how you got there, what are some
Okay.
of your experiences. Go ahead.
I was in recovery for 13 years. I relapsed in 2019. I relapsed in 2019 after we lost our apartment. But how I got in recovery, I mean, how I became an addict was in New York. I was 16 years old. Right after I had my daughter, um, I was in a very bad state, very depressed. They called it back then baby blue. And I started
But now we know
lacing
it's
my
postpartum depression, right?
right.
Mm-hmm.
And I started lacing my joints. And it went from New York, and I had got outrageous in New York. I was
When you
robbing
say lacing
people,
your joints, what were you lacing them with? What?
crack,
Crack. Okay.
lacing it with crack.
Now, is this
I
in the
smoked,
80s? Is this in the 80s or 90s?
yes, in
In the
the
80s.
80s,
Okay.
in the early
So the
80s.
height of the crack epidemic, in particularly in black communities, and especially in well everywhere, but in urban communities. All right. So I want to just paint this
Yes.
picture and take some of our viewers slower because they don't know what lacing a joint is. They probably didn't even know
Oh,
what a
okay.
joint was.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was lacing it with crack, and I had got to the point where I had robbed so many people up there that I had put my own family in jeopardy. Um, because that's what it do. So I moved from New York to North Carolina, came down here. I was doing okay at first, and then I was still getting high, and then I became, and I was out there. I was just out there. I was prostituting. I was robbing people. I've been with women, been with men, all for the sake of the drug. And, you know, that's who I was, by any means necessary. I'm going to get mine.
Mm-hmm.
I stayed away from my family. Half the time they didn't know where I was. I would call when I got locked up or when I decided I wanted to get clean, then I would go back around and then leave again. And I was just in and out, in and out, in and out. And I just stayed out. I just stayed out there. Um,
Yeah. So,
People act like
mhm.
they care about you out there, but they really don't. All they care about is what they could get from you or how you get yours. Um, And I thought I was gonna die that way. I used to always say, when I die, make sure I die with a crack pipe and a 20 on my stem.
Wow. Wow.
That that's what I used to say. Because I thought that's where my life was gonna go, but God had other plans. Um, I'm gonna go back a little bit. As far as the postpartum depression, I think it was just mental mental health issues that I was having. Um, Back then, they didn't talk about mental health issues when I was growing up. Your parents couldn't even really recognize what a mental health issue was because they didn't know.
Mm.
So they didn't know how was they going to able to get you any help.
Right. Right.
And that's as being women, we supposed to be strong, but the men supposed to be stronger. It's hard because most women now are taking both places. They being the mother and they being the father.
Right.
And they working. So how they gonna recognize if something wrong with their child?
Mm.
They never, hardly ever there to recognize how their child really behaves.
Right.
And I believe if my family knew that I had mental health issues when I was younger, I believe they would have addressed it. But if you don't know no better, you can't do no better.
Right.
And we got to educate our communities. We got to keep an eye on our children, how they act today, how they act next week, how they act next month. Is they acting the same? Are they progressing? Are they
Mm.
not progressing? And if not, then I think you should take your child to get help.
Right. Right. And so you're saying that looking back, you recognize that you had mental health issues challenges before the postpartum depression that went undiagnosed and untreated and
Exactly.
unrecognized.
Exactly.
And sometimes people say there's a trauma. People experience a trauma that can trigger both mental health conditions and substance use. Talk about now when you get to North Carolina, you're
Hmm.
trying to do right and stay clean and or not clean. I'm sorry, we don't use that because you're trying to stay in recovery. And what so what for the people who are saying, well, once you were in recovery, why did you go back? Why did you go back? Talk about the disease itself, and because you left your daughter with your mom, and some people would say, well, you know, you had a child. Wasn't that enough to keep you in recovery? Talk about the challenges with that and the disease itself, and how it will make you
I had
ride.
my I had my daughter with me when I came down here. She stayed with me up until she went to CC Spalding in Durham,
Mm,
and it was pulling then. It's not that my child won't enough. It's just that the addiction overwhelmed it.
that's right. That's right.
My child was always enough.
Hmm.
That's why every time I got tried to get clean, I tried to get clean for my child.
And that's
So
important. That's important for people to know, right? Because people cast all kinds of negative dispersions against women who are in addiction, who are not in recovery, and especially mothers. And it's important for them to hear what you said. The disease itself was overwhelming. And we're going to talk
yes.
about how you got into recovery that sustained you and for
Oh, that's a
years.
story right there. I
Yeah.
can't wait to
Uh,
till we get to that part.
but so
But
so tell
yeah.
let so let's also I also want to talk about, because you've shared it with me at different times, sex work and the tie to the addiction piece and the sex work, because we have a problem in our society with human trafficking. We also have a problem with sex workers. When women don't have or feel that they don't have any other options, and you know we have this image that that we put the negative light on the sex worker, but we don't talk about the solicitors, the
The
people.
men who picked us up.
Yeah. So share with I'm trying to get to a conversation you and I had in a car one time when we left church. So
Yeah. One
so
day,
tell us where and what types of people are
hmm,
are complicit in this sex work game, as far as the. Mhm.
I used to go to church, and I even in my using days on Main Street in Durham, Street Garden is right there around the corner. It used to be this pastor be at this one church right there on Main and
Don't say where. Don't say the
I'm
church.
like, yeah, it used to be a church right there, and I used to see him every Sunday after he preached, take his family out to Sunday dinner, and drop them off at home and come pick me up. But this
Wow.
the same man preaching behind the podium,
Right.
talking about us.
And then you also
Doctors,
over near Duke,
lawyers.
right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Doctors,
doctors,
lawyers.
lawyers.
Wow.
I mean, it's not just the perverts out there. It's people up in high places that's supposed to be the pillar of the community that's picking us girls up and paying good money.
Mm. Mm.
And then it be on a regular basis,
Yeah.
so the
So
pot can't call the kettle black. He can't be up there talking about something and then go right around and pick the kettle up.
right. Right. And I just wanted to highlight that part because for me, advocating as a strong women's advocate, I've always said, don't arrest the sex worker. we need to be arresting those that are complicit, that are purchasing and soliciting. What happens
Mhm.
to them, right? What happens to them? And we
Mhm.
never talk about them. So I wanted to, in my meaningful
Oh,
conversation,
oh
to make
yes.
sure we highlighted that
Oh
that it's
yes.
that it's not just the women out there, because many of the women out there are either forced or they are actually, doing what they feel like they need to do when they have no other choice. Let's move on to
Mhm.
the next question I have. Many people have distorted views about women who become addicted to drugs and work the streets. Dispel some of those myths and distortions. What are the unique challenges in particular that women face in active addiction, like when you're trying to get clean, or trying to get into recovery? What are some unique challenges that you face, that women
We have
face in
triggers.
particular?
Um, like when I relapsed in 2019, I relapsed because I was on disability and they said I got better because I hadn't been to jail, I hadn't been to prison, I hadn't been out here fighting, cutting up people, I hadn't been getting in no kind of trouble. So they said I got better. No, I just did what y'all told me to do. I started taking my medicine, and that's what kept me where I needed to be. So when they cut me off, I had to start working. And we lost our place that we had for 4 years.
Mm,
And I felt like I had failed. Even though my husband said I didn't, I felt like I had failed.
mm,
And that triggered me. And then my husband, he was sick. We thought he was going into early stage dementia. So I had a lot on my plate. And it was so much, it had overwhelmed me to where I went back out and I picked up and used again.
mm, mhm. So it's social determinants, it's housing, it's unemployment, our job issues, it's financial issues that we as
But
a society have to invest in, especially for women and women with children and families, and particularly people who are in recovery, because those can be triggers to them relapsing. And so that
correct.
is important, right? When people are
It
worried.
was for me.
Mhm. Mhm.
Everybody have their different triggers.
Okay.
Um, Mental health and recovery is a everyday struggle because it's still times where it go through my head, or I might dream about I'm getting high, or I might wake up and don't want to get out the bed that day. It's
Right.
always something. I might have a whole week of being fine, being good. Then at a drop of a dime, here I am in a deep depression and don't know why I'm depressed.
Right.
So it's an everyday struggle, and staying clean is an everyday struggle too. But I have my husband, I have my daughter, I have my grandkids,
Yeah.
and they are the light of my life. I don't ever want them to think that they my addiction is more than them
Right. Right. And that's
or more than
important.
myself.
That's important. No one is their addiction and no one is their mental health diagnosis. And that is an important message. And I need anybody listening who is struggling right now, who is challenged, who is in active addiction, who isn't in their recovery process, who is dealing with a mental health struggle. Please, please, please hear what she just said. It Separate yourself, who you are, from that, from the illness,
Hmm.
from the addiction. Separate yourself, please. Learn that, and that's important. Tell us now what motivated you to seek treatment and turn things around. So tell us that
I didn't
story.
seek treatment. I didn't go to treatment. One day I had made a lick, which means rob somebody. I had robbed
You
somebody,
made a
and I was
lick. Is it? You said you made
yeah,
a lick.
that,
Okay.
yeah.
Rob.
That means rob somebody.
Okay.
I had robbed somebody in Raleigh, and I had all this money and I was in a dope house and I was just getting high, spending money, getting high, spending money. And I had took a hit on the stem and something just came over me. And they was like, you tripping, you just took that hit, you tripping. I got on my knees, I grabbed my money and I said, God, please take me out of this in the
Wow.
dope house.
Wow. Wow.
And I went straight to God. And I had been clean from that day all the way for 13 years.
Wow.
I didn't seek treatment.
Had you ever
Some
been in
people,
treatment?
yes. Oh, yeah. I've
Okay.
been in treatment, came right out and got high the same day.
Wow. Wow.
Yes, I've been to treatment like maybe 6, 7 times. Yeah, but it didn't do it for me. I had to go to the person that I knew that could really do it.
Mhm.
And everybody is different, but I knew treatment didn't do it for me, so I had to go to something better,
Why do you think
and that
treatment
was
didn't work?
God.
Why do you think treatment didn't work for you?
Because for me, it was a lot of BS and people in there who really didn't know what I was going through. You know, we had counselors and that didn't know what I was going through. How you gonna know what I'm going through if they had to teach you that in school?
Hmm. Hmm. Which is why, again, I think peer support specialists are critical. We cannot do this without peer support specialists because they've
I
been
think
there. Hmm.
I think it should be peer support specialists in every rehab
Yeah, I
and
agree.
more than one. I think they should be the counselors because they understand what they patient be going through.
Right. So you're in a drug house. You're in a dope house. After you've robbed somebody, you get you. So money is not an object issue for you at this point, and so it's not that you ran out of money. Something hit
Mm-mm.
you in your spirit that I'm done. I don't want to do this
And it
anymore.
went all it went from my head to my toes, from my toes to my head,
Mm,
to where my fingers was tingling. Like, and I left all the dope I had on the table and
wow.
picked my money up and I left.
So I don't want to sensationalize this. I don't want to make this a story about sensationalize it. That's the only way I can describe it. And a reality TV kind of thing, right? Because I'm so I'm not into all that glorifying it. But what's the saddest and possibly the worst thing you've witnessed out in the streets to paint a picture of how urgent it is for us to try and help people as much as we can with services and treatment programs that work, because it's a matter of life and death. Tell me, if I were a congresswoman and you were coming to me and you were saying, Dr. L, look, I'm just going to shoot straight. You not funding and putting funding in mental health and substance use disorder, let me tell you what's going on in the streets. And maybe this will move your heart and the heart of people who make funding decisions. I'm just going to shoot and tell, put it to you straight. Y'all need to fund programs that work. You need to fund peer support specialists. You need to fund community-based treatments, community treatments, because this is what's happening in your district in the streets. Tell me what's happening.
People that care. We need people that care. It's not enough people out there that care. They act like they care, but as soon as you're not doing what they want you to do, they give up on you. I think you need them specialists in the communities, in the buildings with the doctors, because I find it a lot easier for me to interact with somebody that I feel deep down inside that I could connect with.
Well, how
It's not
urgent is it? How urgent is
it's
it? Because we've made that appeal,
yesterday
right? How urgent is it? Are people dying out there? Are you seeing people, young getting younger? How urgent is this? Why should I've got to fund I've got to fund infrastructure, roads and bridges and
because now you got 15, 16-year-old girls out here on the streets now. You got 15, 16-year-old girls out here on the street. When I was on the street for 21 years in Raleigh, I seen most of my friends get killed, and I witnessed one of my friends get killed
Mm.
by a police officer.
Wow.
So how are we supposed to feel comfortable and safe when we can't even feel comfortable and safe? When I know I just seen this police officer kill this girl, and I had to jump out his truck.
Wow. Was he on duty or off duty?
He was off duty, but he was getting
Wow.
high.
Oh, wow. Mm. Well, we're going to move on from that story because we don't want to, nothing. So we're going to move on from that. So it's urgent because
Yes,
kids are
it
out
should have
there
been done
and
yesterday.
people are dying. And we need to look at this as a system issue and as a community issue. And we need to stop the nonsense of trying to say that only certain people are out there in the streets living the life that you described, out in the streets, doing sex work, out in the streets in drug houses that are, the downtrodden, the lower class, because if there is one important message, in addition to many of them, that comes out of this, it hits every level of socioeconomic, every profession, every
Hmm.
person. Nobody is immune from becoming addicted to drugs, and nobody is immune from having a mental health challenge. Nobody is exempt. There's no category. It's hitting people, and people go to work every single day in active addiction, and we don't look at them the same. We don't even suspect, because we've got this image of what a person in addiction is, in active addiction is, or
Or
what a
look
sex worker,
like.
or what they look like. And so we need to disavow this. You've heard some stories about who, and we're not going to repeat some of these, but you get the message. Okay, now, so you were moving into this. How do systems fail people in particular, and people in general, with the mental health and substance use diagnosis? You mentioned at the onset of the conversation that all of a sudden you lose your benefits because they said, "Oh, you're better." So talk about how systems, in particularly in North Carolina, how's our system failing people, and what do we need to look at?
Okay, so I was working at the time. They didn't cut me off from working. They cut me off because they said I was better. So I went to appeal it, and I went to Social Security in Greensboro, and I said, "How do a mental health patient get better?"
Right. With an
The
SMI,
super
by the way. We won't say the diagnosis, but with an SMI, and and a person also with a co-occurring, so a substance use disorder and an SMI.
right. So how do they get better? I said, "Oh, since I'm not going to jail no more, I'm not out here fighting, I'm not out here just acting crazy. That mean I'm better." I did exactly what y'all told me to do. Start taking my medicine. I said, "That's why I'm where I'm at today, because I take my medicine. And I know what will happen if I don't. So should I not take my medicine and punch you in the face and then I keep my check?" He turned red.
Mm,
He didn't know what to say.
mm-hmm.
He didn't know what to say.
Right.
So I think a mental health patient, they don't never get better. They just, what's the word I'm looking for? They manage.
Mm,
They manage with medicine.
mm-hmm.
But if you cut me off, how am I gonna get my medicine? I can't afford that type of medicine.
Right.
So here we go again. And that's the spiral they keep us in, to keep us where we at. Oh, I'm gonna cut them off, let them go, then they could get back on, to keep us from moving forward. They don't want us to move forward.
Yeah.
They just want to keep us in that spiral circle twine that they got.
So we have to look at policies in terms of the decisions that are made about one, people need a better understanding of what mental health and substance use recovery is. Because you're right. I think some folk are just making kind of textbook analyses and judgment calls. But we really need to understand, and it varies from people to people, person to
Mm-hmm.
person. But in your case and other cases like yours, we have to understand that of course you're gonna get better if you're doing what disability service, the services you're able to get that you've qualified for are working. But once you take those away, what
What you have?
what do you have? You're going to expect people to spiral downward, and so we can't. We gotta allow people and have an understanding of, for some, yeah, fine, they get better, but for others, it's a lifelong journey.
Let me say this too, Michelle.
Okay.
And when they do their disability reviews, what they should do is don't send us to people, to their doctors, and their doctors don't have our records. Because you go to their doctor and they have questions and don't know nothing, don't know your history at all. They just have certain questions that they're gonna ask, and that's how they determine whether they should still keep you or not. No, if you want to send me to your doctor, then make sure your doctor had my history.
Right. And they make snap judgments. So they're making these judgments without all the background information.
Yeah,
so,
they don't have none of your background.
What does a good service, what does a good system look like that not just for you, but people that your peers? What do we need to invest in North Carolina? Name different types of services. Just what do we need to invest more in North Carolina? I've already said peer support specialists, but what does a service array look like that you think gives jobs for persons with lived experience, right?
Yeah, education. Because believe it or not, most people that's out here getting high and using drugs, they are very smart. But since they've been in that life, they can't get a job. They very smart. A lot of them been to college, got high school diplomas. You'll find very few of them that doesn't have that.
Well, I say this again, not to glorify anything, but I had a young relative once who was a little street level dealer, and I would say, you know what, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. You really ought to be ashamed of yourself, because if you can sit or stand on a corner in the dark and by touching something tell the weight of something, your product, or you can go into a kitchen and put together something like you in a chemistry lab, and you understand how much this needs to go in there in order for it not to be bad. You need your tail in some math or science program. So I agree that we're not talking about dumb people. We're not talking about people who they may be dumb in the choices they make, but they're not unintelligent people. And the prisons, when I taught in the federal prisons in particular, so I taught in the state prison, which was through a college transfer program, North Carolina Central. Dr. Beverly Washington Jones could not get anybody to make that drive down to Fountain Correctional Facility that was open at the time for women. And that's when I discovered Lizard Lick, long before the Lizard Lick Towing Company thing came on TV, because my husband had to come down and get me because my car had knocked off right there at the Lizard Lick exit. I'll never forget. But I would go down there for the women prison. But the most fascinating stories I heard was when I taught in Butner, again through the college transfer program, at this time through Vance Granville Community College. I taught college courses, college sociology courses, undergrad courses. And the stories of these men who were in the federal prisons about where they came from, beyond there, because we couldn't talk about their reasons for being there, what have you, but many of them, you're right, smart and would ace the sociology 701 or whatever it was we were teaching at the time. I was teaching at the time. So you're absolutely right. We're not talking about unintelligent, nor are we talking about uneducable people. People can learn, but people lose a lot of time. And you make me wonder and worry a little bit when we talk about the girls being younger on the streets, because that means they probably aren't in school. And so you do have, I would guess, high school dropouts, but that doesn't mean they're unintelligent by any means.
Mhm. I just think it just need to be more jobs, more education, more training programs for these younger girls that's coming up now that's not in school. I know when I was out there, it was it was a bunch of smart people out there. But now the girls are getting younger and younger. I think they need more training programs, and for that generation, it's really going to take people that really care
Right. Right.
because they are a handful,
Yeah.
but they can be dealt with. They just got to know that they are loved.
Right. That's right. That's right.
And whoever's listening, I love you if nobody told you today.
Oh, that's so nice. I do too. I love you. Vaughn told you so. I'm gonna tell you. So that means somebody told you today. So I'll be the second if you haven't heard it. And let's talk about that. Because I do believe that love not only covers a multitude of sins, as the scripture says, but love and patience and support. How important is that for family members to understand when people are dealing with an addiction? And I know that, a lot of people burn through a lot of capital, social capital, and sometimes,
Mhm.
especially when they go to prison and they've done so much prior to getting there, they can't come back because families give up on them. But you've had a family, including our circle, that never turned their backs completely, right? How important is
No,
family support? I need people to hear this too.
family is so important. I met my husband in 2007, and my best friend brought him to the mental ward because I had tried to kill myself. And we've been together from that moment on.
Hmm.
But he started coming with me to my therapy's appointments. We started going to groups together so he could understand my situation and my issues because he didn't know how to deal with it at first either. All he kept saying was, I love you and I'm not going to go nowhere. But he couldn't understand when I act out or why I was acting this way. So he started coming with me. They have family support groups for mental health. And if you have a significant other, you can take anybody in your family who wants to understand why you are acting this way. Take them with you. Take them with them to therapy.
Right. Right. So family is important. It's important that, we love people unconditionally. It's important that we understand that as Vaughn has shared, it's an everyday challenge. It's an everyday struggle. And because people are doing what they may be doing, it doesn't mean that they don't care about their family, they don't care about their children. That's quite the opposite, right? And we got to separate the disease in terms of substance use and the mental health condition from the individual, and see the humanity in people, see people as human, and we all want to be loved. And sometimes it's the lack of love that can send somebody into the streets, into a
Yes.
drug house, a dope house.
Mhm.
It's the lack of love that can send somebody out to do sex work. And so it's multifactorial. There are many reasons why. I'm not saying that's the only reason. And just sharing that someone that loves you. I remember the woman whose body was cut. She was cut up, and the guy had some of her bones or remains in a knapsack. And her sister contacted me. And this happened in Durham. I want to say White was the sister name or either her name. It's been a while ago, but her sister told me the story, and I share this sometimes. So this story breaks. The woman is and I want to say her name because, so let me do a quick search because I can't remember it. But um, um, her sister, anyway, uh, calls me, and I don't know how she got my number, But I answered the call the first time. I was busy doing something at home, working, and I said, "Okay, I'll call you back." So I never called her back, and she kept calling and kept calling. And I saw the number, and I said, "You know what? Let me go ahead and answer this call." And so when I answered the call, she just started telling me about her sister. And this story was back in 2011. Y'all may remember it. I had to pull it up. That was it. Lakia Boxley. Lakia Boxley is the name of the victim. Her remains had been carried around in the backpack of the guy who had killed her, and they believe that he killed her in a drug rage or whatever. They had been getting high. But her sister, Miss White, yep, I was right about White. Miss White called, and so I finally answered the phone, and she told me just this story about her sister, how they lived in New Jersey, New Jersey, and in New York actually, and her sister, she said she knew her sister had changed. Her sister had been gang raped in their apartment building, in downstairs on the first level of their apartment building, and she said she was never the same. And so but she wanted me to know that they loved her and they cared about her, even though she had come to the South, made her way to the South, but she too had been diagnosed with a mental health disorder. She had gone to Job Corps and actually was in mental health crisis. But initially, I think about me and my initial response, and I have to say this, and I'm not ashamed about it. I'm just saying this. At first, I was like, Lord, if this lady don't stop, what can I do? If this lady doesn't stop calling me. And then finally, when I answered that last call of hers before we connected, really, and I tried to help. And I remember Sharon Elliott Bynum was still living. God rest her beautiful soul, was still living. And she came out to a vigil that I had organized for her in Durham, and a few other people, not a whole lot of people, but she told me the story of the traumas that her sister had experienced that led her on the streets in the first place. And so we have to always remember that everybody has a story. It may not always be a trauma that they've experienced, but trauma-informed care is so important in mental health and substance use treatment. It is so important. People have to understand how folk ended up where they ended up, and there's a story always behind every situation.
Everybody has a story.
Yeah,
Some good, some bad.
that's right.
But I got how to escape reality. When I relapsed in 2019, which I'm clean now.
Thanks God. Thanks be to God. And thanks be to God you did not succeed at attempting suicide. So I want to say that because you are valuable to us.
Yeah, it's always a story.
Mm-hmm.
People don't understand, they just this, or they just no, everybody have a story. Even the ones with money, they have a story.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a
right.
story. And when you get high, you in your own world. So
Yeah,
people out here getting high every day in their own world.
right.
They not even in the same world we in.
And with this COVID pandemic, escaping reality and the trauma, the traumatic experience, we know that at the state level that investments have to be made in this area. And so I'm so glad you shared your story with us tonight.
I want to say one
I
more
want to,
thing, Michelle.
okay.
I want to say everybody needs to have an outlet. Like me, I paint. I do canvases. Everybody needs to have an outlet. When I'm feeling anxious or starting to get depressed, I start painting. It's an outlet. Everybody needs to have an outlet.
I believe that. And that's the good self care. And you know what's so interesting? I was just thinking about that earlier this week about, so I'm doing these things on Facebook about self care throughout the month of May. And that is one that I want to do next. And so look at God. And something happened interestingly. I thought about my old school, not counselor, principal. And the next day or 2 days later looked on at a post on Facebook, she had passed. And so that happens. So this is good connection, spiritual connection. So you all practice self-care, have an outlet, a hobby that you enjoy doing, something that you can escape to that's positive and that's healthy. I want to ask you now, what gives you hope, considering everything that's happening in the world today? What gives you hope?
My grandkids.
They are so beautiful. Cute.
My grandkids give me hope because I know that they are the better generation. They are the generation of change. So it gives me hope. My husband give me hope. He deal with my crazy butt every day for 14
Girl,
years.
mine too. Longer than that.
My daughter give me hope. My cousin give me hope. You know, it's a lot of things. And me evolving give me hope. Because
Yeah.
at one point, I never thought I would evolve.
Yeah. You were something, but you were always loving. You were always, you were. And yes, you were. And so I love those conversations when we were going back and forth to church, but,
Oh, yes,
and even
honey.
beyond, even that. So you've always been, a light, even when you were going through dark times. I want you to know that you were always, and I want anybody else to know that. That's why I say separate a person not in recovery or a person dealing in mental health crisis from the illness or from the addiction or from the diagnosis. Because there's a light in everybody, and we got to see that. And yours shine bright. I think you got this bigger than life personality anyway. So,
Thank you, Michelle.
you are so welcome. So, looking back over your life, what would you say or tell your younger self?
Girl, don't go down. No, don't go left. Don't go left. But I always ask myself when I change, but I think I did everything that I was gonna do because now I'm on both sides of the street.
Mm-hmm.
I can help on both sides of the street.
Yeah. And that's important. Everything that we go through, good and bad, there is a purpose behind it. And if we can learn the lessons from the difficult times, everything that we go through, whether we're in the valley or whether we're on the mountaintop, everything we go through. And I've heard Iyanla Van Zant say when she was advising or counseling Lisa Ray, she said, everybody wants to be at the top, but you got to understand, you got to go through the valleys in order to get to the top.
That's right.
And so, and the key is for us to learn from all the experiences. Don't grow bitter, be better. I try to live my life with very little regrets, because at the end, my mom always says it is what it is. And it wasn't until I got older, even recently, that I really began to embrace that. It is what it is. And you move on. It is what it is. It's done. What's done is done. Keep it moving, right? And so I encourage people to do that. It is what it is. Keep it moving, and try and have as little regrets and see the light even in your darkest hours. Always look for the light somewhere. And I believe in that drug house that day, in your spirit, you were probably already searching for a way out. And the light, searching for a way out. And God said, you know what? This is the day. This is the day. And that's so beautiful about it, because we like to set up how our deliverance happens, but God has his own timing and his own plan. And it never looks like what we set it up with. It never looks like how we envision it to look. God always has a plan for us that's bigger and more remarkable and amazing than what we can think about and what we can think of, exceedingly and abundantly above all that we can think of. So I want people to understand that. Stop trying to set up the conditions for your deliverance, the conditions for your recovery, and just release yourself to the process to say, you know what, I'm ready. However, Lord, you work this out, whatever person you send my way, whatever treatment program, whatever, I'm ready. And I think you were probably ready at that time, even though you had gone out and just robbed somebody and was in there getting high. It's amazing, right? It's amazing how
It's amazing how God do.
It is. It absolutely is. And to know that was, you had been in treatment programs, they hadn't worked. You've been in jail and that didn't work. Some people say I went to jail and that was it. I came, I wasn't able to use.
I think I've been to jail 404 times and prison 3.
Well, thanks be to God, you got out. Thanks be to God, you got out, right? 400 sometimes, right? That is funny. Yeah, it's what you say so many times. After a while, it's like, okay, all right. Yeah. So you tell your younger self, girl, don't go left.
Don't go left. Go right, don't go left.
Yes. And what message would you give to other women and girls who may be in active addiction and who see this or dealing with a mental health condition to inspire them?
Don't care what nobody think about you. Don't care how they look at you. You are who you are. You better than who you are right at this moment. And if I could come out, you could come out.
Amen. You are a testimony. Much love to you. You are an inspiration. Thank you for being a guest on Meaningful Conversations.
Anytime.
I'm going to call you on it because I'm sure you got a few fans that you done picked up tonight. But thank you and God bless you. I honor you where you are today. I honor you where you have been. I honor you for being the person that you are, your honesty, your transparency. It helps. It will help, I'm sure, people. And I want to just give a number to anybody in North Carolina. There is a helpline that was set up by the state of North Carolina called Hope for NC. And that number is 1-855-587-3463. Hope for NC, 855-587-3463. 24/7. It doesn't matter. Call that number if you need access to resources, if you need to talk to someone, if you need to get help, call that number 855-587-3463. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Michelle Laws 7, or on Instagram, Michelle Laws 007. And please go to my YouTube page. Tell people to go to my YouTube page, which is where you can find this show in a few days and replay it and share it with other people. And you can find all of the other shows of Meaningful Conversations or on Oak 93.5. Shout out to Steve, my man behind the scenes, and the producers, Carl Laws and of Savage Bull Entertainment. So thank you. And go to my YouTube page, hit the subscription button, and subscribe. We're trying to do something great here, and you are a part of it. Peace and blessings. Oh, the YouTube page, Dr. Michelle Laws. Just Google it, Dr. Michelle Laws on YouTube, and you should be able to find me there. Peace and blessings.
WRLYLP